Hare Krishna. So we are very happy to have as our guest of honor Chandrasekhara Maharaj, who is our resident sannyasi here in our Brooklyn temple, Radha Govinda Mandir. And since we came here with Tulsi Prabhu almost 3 years ago, he has been always a source of inspiration for us with his learned talks on Krishna consciousness and with his genuine dedication to Prabhupada's mission. So Maharaj, because this is mainly for the devotees in Bulgaria, who many of them speak English, but some of them they will need some, of course, some subtitles. So first of all, because they don't know you, I wanted to request you to share something about how did you join the movement and what was your service and how did the movement look back in the day, in the 70s, in the 80s. I think it will be interesting.
Well, where exactly to start? Of course, Krishna consciousness is something that was not very widely known by a lot of people. What rocketed it to the center stage for most young people was the fact that the Beatles, George Harrison, was involved in, Krishna consciousness to some extent. And he wrote that song, My Sweet Lord. I remember when that song actually came out, which shows how ancient I am. Most people weren't even born when that song came out, but when I was a teenager then when that song came out, and I thought it was an interesting song. I kind of liked it, but we also made fun of it, my friends and I. And we didn't think that much about it, I didn't really think too deeply about it. But I don't think I ever really went through an atheistic phase. I always felt that there was a God, but I always felt that mostly people didn't know much about God. I felt somewhere out there in the wide world, someone must have some actual knowledge about God. But I never ran across anybody that did. My parents, they were Catholics, and they were, practicing. They were good people. And when I was young, I used to go on Sundays to a class in the church where we were going to Mass every Sunday. And, there was some kinds of knowledge, but nothing really definitive. There was a lot of basic questions you could ask, and there were no real answers to those questions. And I felt that somewhere there must be some kind of answer. And I think I've heard from a lot of other devotees that a similar thing happened to many devotees who joined early in the movement. I had some brushes with Krishna consciousness, but never very, much connected. I thought about it, but not very important. At one point, my girlfriend had a friend, and she invited her friend's brother to, at that time, I was living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she invited her friend's brother, and the brother gave us a talk about Krishna consciousness.
Oh.
So the kind of unusual thing was that when I went to college, I went for 1 year, and I went to college in Joplin, Missouri, the first year of college. My second year of college, I went to MU, which is Missouri University in Columbia, Missouri. And then I dropped out of college at that point, and I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was where my girlfriend was going to college. She also wasn't from Oklahoma, but I went down there, and she had 3 roommates, and one of them, actually 2 of them, when they had a break in the summer, they went away from TU, which was Tulsa University. They went away from there, and I didn't know what had happened to them for about 2 or 3 months. And when they came back, suddenly they were all Haribo and Jai Prabhupada and all these kinds of things. And somehow or other, these two girls had gone to New Vrindavan and actually seen Prabhupada give classes at New Vrindavan when Prabhupada visited New Vrindavan. And so one of those girls actually got initiated, and then her brother was also initiated, and he was an artist in the ISKCON movement, and he came and he cooked prasadam for us and he told us about Krishna, and you know, I was mildly interested, not very much, you know. So nothing particularly happened. But about a year or 2 years later, I don't remember how long the time pass was, but that's when I was living now in San Francisco, California. And I was living by myself, and I had a friend of mine come and visit me, and the friend suggested that we go to a Rath Yatra. And I had never been to a Rath Yatra. I had no idea even what a Rath Yatra was. But he said that it was happening in Golden Gate Park. Not only was it happening in Golden Gate Park, it was happening literally 2 blocks away from where I lived, you know, because I lived right next to Golden Gate Park. And so we went to the Rath Yatra. And at that Rath Yatra, I was asked to help. So at any rate, I was, you know, helping with a murti, or a form of Gorni Thai on wheels that were rolling. And I, at one point, saw the entire parade stop, and suddenly there was Prabhupada. And I didn't know enough about Krishna consciousness to know that there was a founder of the movement, or there was a main person. You know, I didn't know anything about Prabhupada. And everybody seemed to very much be offering obeisances to him. And after some time, I offered obeisances too, although I didn't really know what I was doing. And then Prabhupada spoke a little bit at Mark's Meadow. They had a whole setup with a stage and Jagannath deities. And then I didn't think anything about it after that. I went home, and a year later passed. And for some reason, the Rath Yatra again happened. I heard about it, and I thought, this time on my own, because my friend was visiting me from Los Angeles in the previous year, wasn't there. He went back to Los Angeles. And so I decided, I don't know, for whatever reason, to go to the Rath Yatra myself that year. And I went with my girlfriend this time. And then I saw, again, the Rath Yatra parade. But this time, Prabhupada wasn't at the Rath Yatra. There was a devotee there. And I tell this story because it's kind of funny that the devotee was speaking at the Rath Yatra, and he said, whatever you like the most, you should offer that to God. And that sounded reasonable to me. I thought, well, that sounds right, you know, that God is the person everything comes from, and if we like things, then we should at least be willing to offer them to God. So I thought, what can I offer? And you know, I thought, well, I can't offer my girlfriend. She's her own person. And then I thought, what else do I have? I didn't have any money on me. I hadn't come prepared for anything, you know. So I had bought some shoes, some tennis shoes, about a week and a half prior to the Rath Yatra. And they fit really well. They looked really well. They looked nice. They felt very comfortable. I really liked them, although generally I'm not a person who's very enamored of clothes, but these seemed to be very nice. So I thought, well, I'll offer these shoes to God. So in my own way of thinking, I thought, well, I'll take these two shoes and I'll offer them to, I knew that Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra were supposed to be God. I thought they were some kind of interesting representations because I didn't know anything about deities or anything like that. So I put the shoes there on the altar next, while everybody was, all the devotees were busy serving prasadam, so nobody noticed it. So as they were serving prasadam, I put my shoes there in front of Jagannath, saying, you know, this is an offering to you. And, and of course, I'm sure somebody thought, what idiot put their shoes on the altar. Thinking that, you know, someone didn't know better than not to put their shoes there, you know, but I wasn't putting them there because I was just getting, just didn't have a place to put them, but I was trying to offer them. And of course, that was when, you know, was coupled with the previous year when I'd seen Prabhupada at Rath Yatra. And this year, which I had put my shoes as an offering, then Lord Jagannath took me seriously, and I decided to go spend some time at the temple that at that time was in Berkeley, California. So I went to Berkeley, and when I came to the temple, everything just seemed to feel right. I thought, you know, well, let me spend a week or two here. If I spend a week or two here, maybe this will feel like something that will ground me in the world. I won't feel as lost as I feel now. So, although there was nothing tragic going on in my life, I wasn't in any kind of difficulty for any particular reason. I had money. I was, you know, doing what I wanted to do. I had an apartment, so many things. I was even a musician. I was involved in 2 different groups. But I thought, you know, somehow my life feels empty. That was the thing that I remember from that era, the most pressing thing, that although I was doing what I wanted to do, and there was nothing wrong per se in my life, still everything just felt empty. But when I went to the temple, I decided, well, let me stay for some time. I didn't want to immediately leave. But after I was there for a day or two, I decided that this is what I really needed all along. Krishna made that revelation in my heart, and I just remained. I never went back. I never went back to my apartment. I never formally quit my job. I never quit the 2 bands that I was, you know, a part of. I just disappeared from the earth that day.
What about your girlfriend?
No one knew what had happened to me. You know, I didn't make any effort to communicate with anybody. I felt that I had found something that gave my life meaning and was very important and necessary. But I didn't want someone to talk me out of it or to, you know, try to lean on me that I should be doing something else. So I thought the easiest way to accomplish that was just to not communicate. I'd, you know, lived for about a year or so in San Francisco. I'd never spent any time in Berkeley. No one would ever guess that I was there, you know. And no one knew that I had gone to the temple, so there was no way anybody could figure out what had happened to me. So it was just kind of a leap into the dark, and I didn't communicate with anybody.
Maharaj, unlike you, I officially quit my band that I was playing. I announced to them, so then I joined the temple.
I didn't even bother to do that. I just disappeared. You know, I had a room with musical instruments and all kinds of things, you know, stereo and all kinds of things. And I never went to pick it up. I just disappeared. I don't know what happened to all that stuff.
So nobody from this era managed to contact you at all?
No. I had recently moved to a new apartment in San Francisco. Originally, I had lived on Page Street, or actually, I originally lived on, it was Haight Street, and I forget what, yeah, Haight Street. Then next street parallel is Page, and the next street parallel is Oak and Fell. So I lived on Oak Street now. I had originally lived on Page Street. And then I moved to Oak Street, and I was living, you know, in a flat. The way people usually did it was 4 people went together, 4 separate individuals would go together and rent a whole flat, and it had 4 bedrooms, so each person would have their own bedroom, and you had a common kitchen and like that. So I was one, so I made new friends. One of those friends had this band that I had joined, so I'd made new friends and everything, and I never communicated with any of them. I just disappeared. And so that was how I came into Krishna consciousness. And something just spoke to me, and I felt that for the first time here was actual knowledge about God and about how devotion works, and there was practical activity. I got initiated a few months later, and I began going out on Sankirtan, and so I felt, although there were many things I didn't understand, I had felt for the first time I came in contact with a philosophy that really did explain God. It really did explain the world around me that I had always wanted to know about. So I think if I'd just gone on and had never really come across Krishna consciousness, religion would have not been a very big part of my life, if at all. Not that I would have turned to an atheist, but at the same time, religion would not have been a big thing in my life. So I would have had probably some kind of regular life. Although I was starting to get very depressed as a result of not having any substance to my life. So Krishna consciousness, I think, really saved me, and I wouldn't be alive today if I had joined Krishna consciousness when I did. So then, that was how I came into Krishna consciousness, and for years I was doing various kinds of Sankirtan, mostly fundraising, and then some book distribution here and there. And then from Berkeley, there was a time when things began to crumble there due to leadership issues. And at that point, not only myself, but about 8 or so of the main devotees of Berkeley, we all moved en masse to New Vrindavan. We became part of New Vrindavan, and I was for a time the manager of a preaching center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour and a half from New Vrindavan. And that place was what I spent my time trying to work at. And then after some time, I went overseas to do book distribution and also fundraising. We were originally in Taiwan, and then we went to we went to Japan, then we went to Korea, and then we went to New Zealand and Australia. So at various times I was bouncing back and forth between those countries, between Taiwan, New Zealand, and Japan and Korea. And then at a certain point, I wanted to come back to New Vrindavan. So I came back to New Vrindavan, and I was in New Vrindavan for about a year or two. I became involved in management of New Vrindavan. Then I was asked to come to New York City. So that was in 2004. We were attempting then to reclaim a temple that had been taken away from ISKCON. So I came here to New York City originally for that purpose. And only about, that was 2004. And only about, now it's been about 4 months ago, was that project actually realized, where we actually did finally get control back in ISKCON of a temple that had been taken out. So that's kind of a short history of how I came to Krishna consciousness.
Thank you, Maharaj.
And I'm still in New York now. I'm spending time in Freeport, which is where the temple is, which is about an hour and 15 minutes away from here, from the Brooklyn temple. So I'm hoping to spend time back and forth between the two temples, between Brooklyn and Freeport.
So when you look back, Maharaj, how was ISKCON before, when you joined, and what's happening now? So
well, ISKCON before, it's interesting. In the early days of ISKCON, there was a lot of fanaticism and also a kind of only superficial understanding of Krishna consciousness. Although people were very committed, there was no doubt about it. The fact that Prabhupada had been the shining light, the founder of Krishna consciousness, people found it easy to fall into line under him, and whenever he said something, it seemed obviously the right thing to do. And so the movement had direction. It had a strong force. It was moving forward. However, there was a fanaticism, and there was also, at that time, not very much of a systemized way of coming in contact with the philosophy, because at that time when I first joined, Prabhupada hadn't finished writing his books, and at that time also, even if they were written, the books weren't available everywhere. And, you know, even if they were available, then you had to get one and you had to actually study it. And so during the early days of Krishna consciousness, we were always up and doing something, you know. As I remember, it's kind of like that's when you first join, you've got that young energy, and you have two speeds, which is 90 miles an hour, and the other speed is off. So, whenever you would try to read, you know, I would just find myself nodding out, you know. So it was a struggle. I had to finally take to reading while I walked, so I wouldn't just fall asleep, you know. Of course, I overcame that over time. And even the scriptures talk about that. It's not a rare phenomenon. That's actually an expected phenomenon. Because as the living being discovers the transcendental literature, his whole past life of rejecting God and being totally indifferent to spiritual things overwhelms him and tries to keep him from getting involved in understanding that literature. So this is mentioned in the Harinam Chintamani, that even more than, you know, chanting Hare Krishna, hearing and reading the philosophy has this potential to awaken in the living entity the intense desire to do anything else.
Yes, and I think the Kumaras, they mentioned that what is the biggest obstacle for self-realization? It is to think that there is something more pleasurable than reading, chanting.
Right, right. We hear that it is, but we don't experience it, at least in the beginning. And the reason we don't experience it is because we have so much indifference and even distaste for serving God. So when we hear about it, we want to be doing something else, and the whole body tends to shut down. So, but over time, that changed, and I became interested in the philosophy, and I began to study it. And of course, over time, ISKCON came to grips with some of these things. With when Prabhupada, of course, left the world, it left an intense vacuum, and there was no one like Prabhupada. However, we had a GBC, or a governing body commission, which Prabhupada had set up to manage. And at one point, the whole ISKCON movement had practically come to the point of being 11 separate movements, because there were different devotees, main leaders of ISKCON, that were given what we called at that time zones. and they managed that particular zone. And in another zone, there was a different leader. And so over time, there were many miscomprehensions about how that system was supposed to work. And as a result, many people left the movement, many people were disenfranchised, and many people got initiated by someone that they really didn't have any connection with, because it was assumed that whatever zone you were in, that was your default guru as well. So all those things happened. And then there was some, as each one of these zones became a law unto itself, ISKCON was threatened with almost becoming 11 separate movements, if not more. But luckily, somehow or another, by Krishna's mercy, that did not take place. Some of these leaders began to have their own issues. Many of them left leadership positions, left the office of guru, and left even being devotees. You know, some of them even left the world also at the same time. So all these things began to happen. And the GBC began to knit the movement back together into one organization. And over some time, we began to recognize that the movement, the Hare Krishna movement, needed to have a bonding philosophy, and it needed to actually train devotees. And so at that point, then classes started to become more systematic. You know, before that, there were classes, of course. There have always been classes, but oftentimes it was just kind of by whoever happened to be in the area, especially if we had visiting guests. And to some extent, that's the way it is now. But there was no systemized, like Bhakti Shastri or Bhakti Vaibhava or Bhakti Sarvabhauma or any of those kind of things, where the literatures were looked upon as a whole, and like you would in a college, you would go through each literature and come to grips with all the principles and the systems and the theories and the explanations there, you know. So instead, in the earlier days, people would just get what they ever got, you know. You had a devotee who was interested in agriculture, he would give classes only about Varnashram Dharma. If you had a devotee who was interested in traveling to India to see the sacred places, you'd hear all about various sacred places. You had a devotee that was interested in, you know, some kind of book distribution. You would hear everything tied into why you should go out on book distribution. So in other words, each, you know, person would give their own slant on their particular service, and you wouldn't get a sense of what the Shastras actually say. And there's so many details in our literatures that oftentimes, I think, when devotees come into contact with the vast expanse of, you know, Bhagavad Gita, which is, you know, 700 verses, and you have Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 verses, and usually it winds up being somewhere between 15 and 30 books, you know, when it's put into a book form. And then Prabhupada did an English translation of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, another 16 to 20 books. So a lot of times devotees, they have these books and they put them on the shelf, and it seems like this monumental, lofty, impossible goal to come in contact with those books and understand what's actually in them. So now ISKCON has seen that need and has made some effort to set up courses and to try to systematically get across this philosophy. But there's still a lot to be desired. But in the early days, there was no systematic anything. There was no real systematic leadership. There was no systematic organization. There was no systematic way of studying the books. There was no systematic way of one chapter of Krishna consciousness in one location, of systematically dealing with another location. Oftentimes, they saw each other as competitors or something else, and there was not a lot of cooperation. That, thankfully, has changed, and the ISKCON movement did not fragment into sub-movements. thankfully that also has not happened, although it could happen again. But you know, the point is that now there's some systematization to coming to grips with our philosophy, and there's some organizational structure that's quite now well spelled out. Whether it's adhered to is another issue, but at least it's documented. You know, how various organizations should work with each other. Now, you know, North America is divided into 5 zones, and we're Zone 2, and you know, North America is one sort of region of Krishna consciousness. India is another region, and we have Africa another region. Europe is another region, et cetera, et cetera. So we have these various regions, and these regions work together with some common goals. And the idea is also there in our ISKCON system to have devotees regularly get together at least once a year in some central place and discuss things and meet, so that people on one side of the planet can come in contact with people who are prosecuting Krishna consciousness on another side of the planet.
ISKCON Leadership Sangha in Mayapur,
Yeah.
these things.
Right, like the ILS, ISKCON Leadership Sangha, or this year there was the Sannyasi Guru GBC Sangha, SGGS, and then there's, you know, other similar kinds of programs.
Yes, Maharaj. So, some questions from our guests here, or I can proceed.
When I'm listening to what you're saying, Maharaj, it looks like the Brooklyn Temple is still in the initial years of
The what?
ISKCON. The Brooklyn Temple, it looks like it's still in the initial years of ISKCON.
The initial what of ISKCON?
Years.
Initial years. Yeah, yeah. That's
we
interesting.
have to set up many systems and lots of education.
Right, right, right.
But the devotees are very busy also, so even if you have opportunity, people don't come so much because everybody has service. Well, so in connection with what you're saying, Maharaj, so I think one of the major concerns now is that the old-time devotees, the senior devotees, they are gradually letting go of the management. So who's gonna replace them, and how is this process looks like? How is this gonna work?
Yeah, well, that's a big issue in ISKCON in general, is succession. It's quite obvious that many of the leaders who have been leaders since the time they were in their 20s, you know, and now they're in their 80s, so you know, they're coming to the point where they're physically not able to do what they once did. And there are many young people who are part of the inner structure of organizing Krishna consciousness. However, you know, the training has been, I think, mostly superficial and mostly academic, you know. The younger devotees have not really been involved in making decisions. They've been involved in being in the background. However, ISKCON has made an effort to give people management training, which is something that wasn't there before, you know. In the earlier days, how someone became a temple president was probably would say, why don't you open a center in this city? And you know, what did you learn about how to open a center? Absolutely nothing. You know, you didn't have any understanding of how to manage people, or what it took, or what legalities were, how to set up a you know, responsible organization. And we got away with that for a while because we were a fledgling new movement, an NRM, as they're called, New Religious Movement. But we're much too big to do that anymore. So the impetus was to create a formalized structure. Now, that formalized structure is far from fixed or far from functional. We have lots and lots of stuff on paper, ISKCON is a perfectly wonderful paper organization. If you want a paper on something, we've got it. If you want to know how something's supposed to work, we have a whole structure and we've got documents to show how it's supposed to work. But we don't usually go the next step to empower those people and, in most cases, fund the people that are necessary to make some structure work. Organizations take internal structure, and those internal structures require funding. And ISKCON doesn't seem to have gotten around to the funding side of it, so you have all these organizations and inner workings that are mostly on paper, and you have one or two devotees who are managing some essential structure in ISKCON, all pro bono. They all have to do it on whatever money they make some other way, you know. So this doesn't lead to a very cohesive organizational structure that's very dynamic. So that's one of the issues. And although, as you're saying, that education has been a buzzword in ISKCON for some time, actually implementing it is another step. We have done it to some extent, but often there are so many pressing needs for a temple that devotees, I think, are experiencing some of the same things that I did when I first came into the movement, where, you know, we had our, what was called our day back. You know, you had 6 days you were out on Sankirtan. You were, from the time you finished morning prasadam until about 6 or 7 in the evening, you were out on the street somewhere doing something, you know, physically active. And of course, when you got back, you know, you would eat something and immediately conk out. And the 3:30 alarm would come way too early. So that was how your life was. You had 1 day back, and that 1 day back, generally the body would use that to compensate for all the missed sleep that was the other 6 days. And so actually carving out the time and making a priority for education is, I think, something that ISKCON has toyed with, but has far from gotten to the stage of implementing it properly. And the other thing that I'm seeing that's a very serious lack is a lack of focus on the importance of the holy name.
Yeah, here we coming to the next thing I wanted to ask you. This, what you are referring to as used to chant Hare Krishna movement,
Right.
Or somebody else referred to
Right. So
before.
what happens in ISKCON is we eulogize the holy name. There's no doubt about it. You know, you'll hear it talked about in classes. There are devotees who travel throughout ISKCON and give seminars on how to come in contact with the holy name and do it more assiduously and more with more focus and less distraction. But in general, the mentality, the shift has not, I think, gone very deep. It's a commitment, but the commitment is still largely only on the surface level. It's largely in the you know, philosophical and organizational level, but it hasn't really filtered down to be a part of the practical level. So, you know, one of my devotee friends told me recently he heard 2 acharyas in our ISKCON movement, and they were talking, and one of them said that he felt that 50% of the devotees that he had initiated had, in his estimation, probably stopped chanting Hare Krishna. And another one concurred, saying that it was probably the same with his group, you know. And so I wonder whether these figures are accurate. You know, I tend to doubt them to some extent, but still, even if it's 30%, you know, that's still an enormous amount of people who are part of what I call the used to chant Hare Krishna movement. So I'm not worried about the Hare Krishna movement. I'm worried about the used to chant Hare Krishna movement. And there's another movement that's closely connected with the used to chant Hare Krishna movement. That's the chant for show movement, where a person chants at least visibly some japa, so no one can say, well, I never see you chant japa. Well, sure, they chant 2 7 rounds or something like that at a time when people see them, and then the rest of them, the rounds never happen. And this is a precursor to the used to chant Hare Krishna movement. Why does this take place? And that is that we hear about chanting, and we hear that it's important, but the mechanism, the lifestyle changes it takes to make that a reality and to actually come in contact with chanting Hare Krishna is not part of our technology, as a movement. We hear about it, we hear it eulogized, we hear people talk about it, and sometimes we get a little fired up for a week or two. But the problem with the chanting of the holy names is that it's such a different activity than anything else we've ever done in our lives. It's nothing like driving a car. It's nothing like running a temple. It's nothing like organizing a class. It's nothing like cooking a Sunday feast. It's very different in a fundamental way than all those activities. And when we went to high school, when we went to college, when we grew up in the world around us, some of us who grew up outside of Krishna consciousness, we never came in contact with any kind of activity that is anything like chanting the holy name. Most people from the outside world, when they learn that, we chant Hare Krishna and we chant it on beads, and on a set of beads there's 108 beads on that set. We chant one mantra on each bead, and so that means when we go around one set of times on one set of beads, we've chanted 108 times. We do that 16 times every day. Most people think, wow, that's insane. Why do you say the same thing over and over again? Only some kind of crazy people must do this. And in fact, if you do it over and over again and you don't make an effort to plumb into the reality of the holy name, you are a crazy person. You are.
That's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, right? He says this is called pramada. It's madness.
Madness, right. And, but how do you go from chanting in a distracted way to chanting in a focused way? That, we hear things in various seminars on chanting the holy name, and I think there are people in our movement who are seriously taking the process of chanting. And we don't make many commitments on the day of initiation. When Prabhupada was actually the initiator, he just simply required the devotee to agree to avoid illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, and intoxication, those 4 prohibitions: sex, gambling, intoxication, and meat eating. And he only asked for one positive, and that was to chant 16 rounds every day. That was the only positive commitment we made to the spiritual master. And, these days, the disciples of Prabhupada, I think for the most part, ask those same things of their disciples. We don't, take a vow to distribute a certain amount of books every day. I mean, maybe devotees have, but that's not a part of our regular philosophy. We don't take a vow to collect a certain amount of money every day. We don't make a vow to, read a certain amount of literature every day. All those things are important, but we do make a vow to chant 16 rounds. And as the years cross by, one of 2 things will happen. A person will either decide that, why am I wasting all my time just mumbling something over and over again? I could get so much more done if I take these hour and a half or 2 hours and do something else more productive with them. And that's where you get into the, used to chant Hare Krishna movement. Or a person finally thinks, hey, this has gone on long enough. I've been chanting for 20 years. I've been chanting for 30 years. It's always the same thing. I'm half falling asleep. I'm distracted. I do a few rounds. I check my email. Then I do some more rounds, and then I fall asleep. And then I do some more rounds. And somehow or other, I get them done throughout the day. And it's been like this for the last 15, 20 years. It's got to change. And then a person thinks, I have to do something about this. And usually when that occurs, there's not a lot of options, unless you go to one of these japa focus seminars. And then they do give many good tools. I've been to many of them myself. And that's why I think that it would be good to, the two things I would like to see is to create a real system of education in ISKCON where, along with joining the movement, the devotee has their time managed in such a way, just as you do in school, where you're going to be conscious at a certain time when you're ready to hear about the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, or they do in the army. They have their physical training. They do lots of that in the army. But at the same time, they also have their time when they're sitting in a classroom and learning about something, which is, supposedly people aren't supposed to be sleeping during that time. So that I would like to see. And also a commitment of people getting together who have decided that we're called the Hare Krishna movement for some reason. And if we're a Hare Krishna movement, we ain't chanting Hare Krishna. What are we? It's like a billboard with no product,
Right.
We are a movement that sells an experience. And that movement we call Krishna consciousness. And that experience is supposed to be mediated by something we call the Maha Mantra, the holy name. And if nobody's having that experience, if nobody's actually getting to a deeper level, then, we're all talk and no show. We're all, advertisement and no product, So that's why at least some people have to make the effort to go to a deeper level and meet together on a frequent basis and discuss how they're coming along and what kind of things have helped them or what things have come as a block for them. And then you can realize that Krishna consciousness and these austere and difficult things we have to do are all worth it. And at the same time, all these mysterious sounding things which are just littering every page of the Vedic literatures and Prabhupada's translations of them. These mysterious things are realities. But unless we're deepening our connection with the holy name, we won't experience the reality portion of it. We will become like most religions do. Will become a type of churchianity, which means that, people will come together, people will chant Hare Krishna, obviously.
Social gatherings.
Right, and there will be donations given, temples open, books will be distributed, and the movement will carry on. But something will be missing. And that is the deep experience of Krishna consciousness, that thing that devotees felt when they were around Prabhupada. We don't have Prabhupada as a physical presence. However, he can be reached, but only by those who are at a deeper level of connection to Krishna consciousness. He won't be reached by people at a superficial level of Krishna consciousness. So
yeah, I find it curious, Maharaj, that in ISKCON official calendar we have nowadays a week of the Holy Name.
right.
Like the Hare Krishna movement, we have a week, 1 week of 52 weeks. 1 week is dedicated to the to the Holy Name. So yeah, I was thinking, we were joking with Tulsi that maybe these gatherings of these serious chanters, they should start in a similar way as the another group. You know, they start with my name is such and such das, and I'm an offender of the Holy Name.
Right. Yeah, like the AA or something.
Yeah, right. So it's a good foundation to
Right.
start improving the chanting. Yeah.
Raj, what is personally helping you to experience this deep chanting? Can you share something?
Well, yeah. When we're talking about, personally, I've been to many, seminars about increasing the chanting of the holy name. And I found them somewhat good, but nothing left any impression on me, to be honest, and that's not to, I'm not denigrating those various types of japa focus seminars. I think they're good. But whatever was being discussed in those didn't hit me for whatever reason. I think to some extent each one of us has a singular and personal journey to discover what's meant by the Hare Krishna mantra, what's really there. But on a couple of occasions, someone said something, and it seems insignificant, but somehow or other, that thing that they said opened the whole door for me, and two of those things was, I think, about, what is it now? About 4 or 5 years ago in India, someone was giving class. I was there at the Mayapur, and they mentioned that Prabhupada once said that, no, it was Ravindra Swarup that made that statement. That's where I remember it's from. Ravindra Swarup made that statement, that Prabhupada said how you should chant Hare Krishna. Just try to hear yourself sincerely chanting Krishna's name. I mean, it's just a single sentence, and it either means something to you or it doesn't. And to me, it meant something. And I tried to put myself in that type of an attitude of just trying to hear myself chanting Hare Krishna. That was the first part. And then it was something Matuna said to me some time before. And it's been said in many scriptures that the holy name is a person. And again, it's just a single few words. And it's a mysterious group of words, too. How is a sound a person, but somehow or other, there was a meaning that came across to me. And so now when I chant, I'm not saying those words over and over again in my mind. The holy name is a person, the holy name is a person, I'm chanting Hare Krishna, that's what I'm actually saying. But there is a frame of mind where I'm trying to experience what it's like to see the person that these words are, indicating. And I'm not thinking it, it's not a thought, it's a frame of mind. So those two things have made a big difference. And that's why I think come together to discuss the techniques and the realizations and setbacks that we have in delving deeper into the holy name, I think will be productive. What I say might not mean anything to anyone else, or it might. But in any case, what you will come away with, even if the particular technique that I say doesn't resonate, is that my experience of chanting Hare Krishna is not what it was 5 years ago. It's different, and it's palpably different, you know. So something changed, and it took 30 years for me to get around to that, you know. And I think there are people who haven't gotten around to that, you know. So it either, you know, it's something that a person has to work at for themselves, and it may just take time, and it may take pestering Krishna with a lot of prayers, and finally, if we're sincere enough, Krishna will open the door and show us what that missing element is. It is actually a journey in consciousness, and unfortunately in the Western world, we don't have words and we don't have concepts or theories about what the internal world is like. English particularly, in the Western world in general, is really doesn't go down that hole. Doesn't go there at all.
It goes down the rabbit hole.
It goes down the rabbit hole instead, right? So what Krishna consciousness is about is learning how to, even when I talk about my experience of chanting Hare Krishna, I have to resort to metaphoric and poetic language, because I'm talking about things that we don't have words for. And I'm talking about experiences that in general, in English and in the Western world, we don't talk about experiences in great detail. We talk about externalities in great detail. We know how to describe what the parts are for an internal combustion engine. We know how to describe even the way that the immune system attacks a foreign invader. We know how to describe, you know, how subatomic particles interact at speeds near the speed of light. You know, we know all those things. But internally, we don't have words for it. We never discuss it. We're not a phenomenological language. We're not a phenomenological people or a phenomenological society. So we have to use words that are maybe meaningful to some people and maybe completely meaningless to other people. But in any case, I'm convinced that if some core people of a particular temple or a particular location get together on a regular basis and discuss it and talk about various techniques from different angles and their experiences from different angles, this will create that hunger, that thirst, that sense that, yes, there is something to this chanting of Hare Krishna. It isn't just a eulogy. It isn't just this, mumble mantra said over and over again that we're supposed to do because we know we should. You know, that there's something deeper there. And that mystical deepness needs to be reached after by at least some percentage of the devotees. Because otherwise, then, if nobody's really getting through to a deeper level, we'll see this used to chant Hare Krishna movement burgeon. And we'll have, of course, the chant for show movement quite large, you know, people making a show because they know they're supposed to be chanting Hare Krishna. And if you don't chant Hare Krishna, maybe someone will come and ask you some questions about it, which will make you uncomfortable. So, so that's why, you know, people chant for show. But there are, I'm sure, also devotees who have been chanting for a long time and wish they could figure out how to get to a deeper level. But associating with others that have that as a specific topic, as a specific focus for a gathering, then I think that will have a positive outcome. And we're hoping maybe in fall to start doing something in that direction. Anyway, that's the two things that I'm hoping for, is to increase a practical system for teaching and learning Krishna conscious philosophy, and for making a focus group for hearing the holy name and getting to a deeper level, a deeper commitment, a deeper realization in the chanting process.
Yeah, and they're connected very much, these two.
Yeah.
What you're saying reminded me about another thing that Mituna also said, because you're quoting Mituna Prabhu. And he was saying that unless we try to chant carefully, then we never ever develop a relationship with this person. And he was giving an example: if you live with somebody at home, but you never communicate really to this person, so you'll never develop any relationship with him.
Right.
And it just reminded me about Chant, who was saying that we are inside of our apparatus, and there is no way for us to actually to reach out to the reality, because reality is as it is, but we cannot understand it because we are conditioned, basically. So I was thinking that the holy name is the only way out of this conditioned nature. And if we don't use it properly, I mean, use it is a bad word, if you don't surrender to the holy name, then as Mituna Prabhu was saying, we will be only communicating with our own mind, material mind. And that's we will develop a relationship with the mind, actually, not with Krishna. So,
and it's much easier to hold up superficial externalities, formalities. And humans are great at that. We do it all the time. You know, that we have speeches, we have events, we have celebrations, et cetera, but in the long run, unless someone is getting a deep inner experience of God, then something is seriously missing.
The most important thing.
The most important thing, right? I mean, it's still good, but you know, the most essential thing is missing, and eventually there's a tendency for it to just ember out, you know, to gradually get cooler and cooler until it disappears altogether. And that's what happens to modern religions. We used to point to other religions as, you know, having all these, you know, big festivals and things like that, but actually having no philosophy. But, you know, now it looks like ISKCON's following the same trajectory, you know, that it's easy to have big temples and have lots of people meeting and being able to pay your bills and being able to quote so many people are part of your congregation, et cetera, et cetera.
Especially in India.
Yeah, especially in India. But in the long run, if people aren't actually getting to the point where they're experiencing some deep internal connection with God, then the whole thing has missed an essential level, and it becomes more and more superficial every year. You know, the minute it disconnects from that deepest level, then each year brings a new level of superficiality, a new distance where things seem to be going on, you know, but you know, there's something missing, and nobody knows what that something is. You know.
Maharaj, also, I think obstacle could be that if we read, for example, Madhurya Kadambini, the description of this type of person that you're describing, the advanced devotees, they appear to be a little odd in their social behavior, in a sense, because they're too much unconcerned about this reality, and they're too much engrossed in the spiritual reality. I mean, not too much, just...
Right.
So maybe that's another thing that we have to consider, is that...
well, that's the nature of superficial religion, you know, that we talk about and we eulogize God, devotional service, the focus on Krishna. We eulogize it, but at the same time, our real consciousness is preoccupied with pounds and shillings, you know, with what we're doing every day. How do we make a living? What issues we have in the family and all these kinds of things. And we can hardly escape from it. And we take that as reality.
Exactly.
And the things that we read in Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, the things we read there, seem like nice platitudes. They seem good, and they seem like something in a faraway world that one day we will get to. But we can't let go, because to let go, one has to really connect with the holy name to sever those ties.
To have a shelter somewhere.
Yeah, well, I've seen it in my own life that when you chant Hare Krishna, your whole orientation starts to gradually change. You begin to realize this is the virtual reality. The holy name is the actual reality. But even then, you know, it seems like that one minute, and then the next minute it doesn't again, and you flip-flop back and forth. And that's why I think that for the reality of Krishna consciousness to take hold as a primary direction in my life, then one has to be serious about chanting the holy name, and one has to be serious reading the books, because the philosophy of Krishna consciousness just explains to us again and again from so many angles what's really going on here. And it's hard then to become bamboozled and misled by various presentations of other people, by various other philosophies, by even our own mind's trickery, you know, when you hear what the philosophy is and you begin to do it on a regular basis and seeing it from different angles.
So basically either we become very serious about our japa or we just perish.
Well, right. We become, you know, a kind
another
of
face in the crowd.
Another Hinduy sort of, you know, thing where we, you know, rub Ganesh for luck and bring some rice and put some incense on the altar, and we ring some bells, and people put Rocky beads around their arms and things like that, you know, all those kind of things that are, you know, part of the culture. Oftentimes people can't distinguish between culture and sadhana, you know. The two are interrelated, to be sure, but you know, culture isn't just worshipable in itself. It's worshipable when it's connected to philosophy, when it actually is being used as a tool of connecting one to the sadhana and the philosophy. When culture is just on its own, you know. It's like anything else, you know. India, they dress in bright colors in a certain way, and you know, in Renaissance Italy, they dress in a different way, and you know, in Russia, they dress in a different way altogether too. So, you know, culture is culture. It can be helpful, it can be harmful, it can be neutral, but when it's tweaked or dialed in to where it's helping to augment or implement a philosophical understanding of a spiritual platform, then it's useful. Otherwise, it's just an interesting, you know, side feature.
Phenomena.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Maharaj.
Okay.
I think we will leave the Western philosophical questions for next one. It's a whole topic on its own. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.